Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting Sunday afternoon talk by one of our own members, Dinesh Bhai. I'd like to say a few words about Dinesh Bhai and who he is very shortly. Dinesh Bhai is a fellow of the Association of the Chartered Certificate Accountant and a senior director at Deloitte. His close friend was diagnosed with a potential life-threatening disease at a very young age. This prompted Dinesh Bhai to research in combating chronic illnesses through lifestyle changes. I don't want to divulge too much and give out too much information and then break the excitement of this talk. So what I would like to say is welcome everyone to a topic which is quite close to my heart as well, plant-based diet, and how important it is for all of us to ensure that we are eating healthy. But before I hand over the mic to Dinesh Bhai, I would like to point out just one simple thing. The subject and the content of the presentation by Dinesh Bhai is based entirely on his personal views and opinions. The Austrial Association of the UK expresses no opinion or recommendation on anything that may be suggested or expressed by Dinesh Bhai with regards to the plant-based diet. So thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. I'd love to talk on and on and on, but I think it's time for us to welcome Dinesh Bhai and for him to share his journey on the plant-based diet. Thank you very much, Dinesh Bhai. Over to you.
Malaben, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to present on such an auspicious day. We've had the Dajadin today, and I really appreciate the opportunity that has been accorded to me. I will now share my screen. Hope everyone can see it. And actually, I will start off with our first poll question. I would like this to be as interactive as possible. So if anyone has got any questions that they want to ask during the presentation, if you logged in on Zoom, please use the Q&A function. If you have logged in through YouTube Live, there's a chat function, please use that. And I also welcome any feedback. Again, use the chat function in both Zoom or YouTube if you have any specific feedback for me. So thank you. Let's start off with the first poll question. What is the leading cause of death worldwide? Is it diabetes? Is it cancer? Is it heart disease? Or is it respiratory disease? You have 10-15 seconds to answer, and only the people who have logged on to Zoom will be able to answer. So can we close the poll now? And if we can look at the answers. So 46% said diabetes. Sorry, 46% said heart disease, 37 said diabetes, 13 said cancer, and 4% said respiratory disease. The correct answer is heart disease. So thank you very much. We'll move on to the second poll question. So heart disease is the biggest killer globally. Now we just want to find out how many people die of heart disease in the UK every day. Is it 180? Is it 280? Is it 380? Or is it 480? Can we close the poll now? And the answers are 6% said 180, 36% said 280, 32% said 380, and 26% said 480. And the correct answer is 480. 480 people die of heart disease every day in the United Kingdom. What does that mean? We can close the poll results now. What does that actually mean? It means that one person dies every 3 minutes in the UK because of heart disease. From the time I started this presentation till now, someone in the UK has actually died of heart disease. One every 3 minutes, we have 167 deaths due to heart disease every year. To put this into context, the population of Oxford is roughly 167,000 people. Dr. Esselstyn, who is the author of How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, says, coronary heart disease is nothing more than a toothless paper tiger. What does he call heart disease? As a tiger, but made of paper and which does not have any teeth. He says coronary heart disease is nothing more than a toothless paper tiger that may never exist. And if it does exist, it may never progress. This is a completely benign foodborne illness. The topic of my webinar today is prevent and reverse chronic illnesses through a plant-based diet. Just a disclaimer, my presentation is not intended to provide medical advice. It is intended for information purposes only. I'm not from the medical field, but my research is based on the work of scientists and medical professions. If you decide to make changes, please do consult with your GP. My presentation is based on my own experience and in no way implies that this is a universal cure, as I do recognize that each individual is unique. So now I'm going to talk about my story. A close friend of mine and I went for a walk, a brisk walk in November 2018. Whilst we were walking up a slope, I realized that my friend was actually becoming breathless. I became worried as he's much younger than I am and is generally much healthier than I am. So I pointed out to my friend that you are actually becoming breathless whilst walking up a slope. I suggested to him that he should probably get an urgent appointment with his GP to have it checked out. He actually did see his GP the following day. The GP had some urgent blood tests and ECG done, and all the results that came were actually normal. However, as my friend's father had passed away at a very young age due to a heart attack, his GP referred him to the rapid chest clinic at Royal Free Hospital. The Royal Free Hospital saw my friend within 2 weeks. They repeated all of the tests, and again, all the test results were normal. They gave him an appointment for a CT angiogram. He had the CT angiogram done in December. And early January, my friend received a call saying that he's got a blockage in the artery, which is 80%, and he needs to come in urgently for an angiogram, and they're likely to insert a stent. This was shocking news to my friend, something he did not expect. He asked me if I could accompany him for the angiogram, and I said yes. However, at that time, I knew nothing about blockages in arteries, angiograms, stents, and bypass surgeries. My friend had the angiogram on the 9th of January. After the angiogram, the cardiologist came to meet us and informed us that the blockage is only 50%. And currently there is no need to insert a stent. The cardiologist prescribed many drugs to prevent my friend from having a heart attack. The cardiologist advised my friend to reduce weight and exercise regularly. Just out of curiosity, I asked the cardiologist, is there anything that he can do to reverse the blockage? He said, no. He's been treating heart patients for the last 30 years, and he said, lifestyle changes and medication will just help him prevent having a heart attack in future. This was quite upsetting for my friend and even for myself. So I started doing my own research on reversing heart disease. I was interested in natural cures rather than pills and procedures. I was looking for scientific research and clinical trials which showed that one could arrest the progression of the disease, maybe reverse it, and maybe even cure it. There are so many videos on YouTube by bloggers who claim many things, but their claims remain unsubstantiated with scientific research or clinical trials. During my research, I stumbled across the clinical trials of Dr. Esselstyn and the scientific research of Dr. Colin Campbell. I read their books, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease and the China Study by Colin Campbell. I watched about 100 videos on YouTube on this subject by Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Colin Campbell, Dr. Michael Greger, Dr. Neil Bernard, Dr. Dean Ornish. I also watched various documentaries on Netflix, on YouTube, and on Amazon Prime on this subject. So who inspired me? Frances Greger. She was the grandmother of Dr. Michael Greger. She had end-stage heart disease. She had already had multiple bypass operations. Again, she had angina pain. She went to the cardiologist. They said, unfortunately, there is no more plumbing left in your body. We cannot find a vein which we can cut and do a further bypass operation. So Frances was sent home in a wheelchair to die at the age of 65. At that time, Dr. Pritikin, he had opened up centers where he was treating heart patients with a plant-based diet and exercise. So she actually admitted herself into one of Pritikin's centers. Then a miracle took place. Within 3 weeks, she no longer required a wheelchair. She could walk 10 miles per day. And on a plant-based diet, she lived a further 31 years. This is the power of a plant-based diet. Neil Bernard, the president of the Physicians Committee, says, if you change your diet to a plant-based diet and do it vigorously, you have enormous power. You can reverse heart disease. You can prevent it. So let's look at the practice of medicine. How has it changed 2,400, 500 years ago? And how is medicine being practiced today? Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, says, let food be thy medicine. Today, we seem to be mopping the floor instead of turning off the tap. Medicine currently is focused on relieving symptoms and maybe not on curing diseases. The medical profession is focused on pills and procedures, a pill for every ill. I'm sure no one became a doctor with a burning desire to write prescriptions. My question to everyone who is attending this webinar, when is the last time we went to our GP and the GP asked us, what do you eat every day? What did you have for your breakfast, for your lunch and dinner? Personally, my GP has never asked me what I eat. The question is, how long will doctors pretend that food has nothing to do with these diseases? In fact, it has everything to do with chronic illnesses. It is the food we are eating, a standard Western diet, that is causing chronic illnesses. But perhaps we are to blame as well. We expect a quick fix every time we go to the doctors. We expect them to prescribe a pill for our symptoms to go away. We also need to understand that the pharmaceutical industry is focused on customers and not necessarily cures. Customers with chronic illnesses is the most lucrative annuity business that the pharmaceutical companies have. Just think about it. The customers who have chronic illnesses like heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, they will start taking pills from the day that they are diagnosed until the day that they die. And generally, the pills increase during the lifetime and never decrease. Now, thinking about the various stakeholders, the pharmaceutical industry, the meat industry, the dairy industry, the medical, stents, bypass operations, and the processed junk and fast food industries. All of them want to make money. None of them have a vested interest in making us healthy. Health isn't about what the doctors can do for you, but what you can do for yourself in the kitchen. There was a program on Radio 4 on BBC on the 25th of March 2018 when medical students and GPs were interviewed. The medical students said they currently learn almost nothing about the way diet and lifestyle affect health, and they should be taught more. They say what is taught to them is not practical or relevant to most of the medical problems they see in GP surgeries, clinics, and hospitals. A leading GP estimated that up to 80% of his patients had conditions linked to lifestyle and diet. This year alone, the NHS will spend more than 11 billion pounds on diabetes alone. Social care costs, time off, etc., will actually double that bill. So have we really forgotten something fundamental? Nature intended us to be healthy. We started out as only two cells. Our body's intelligence and healing power has formed this incredible masterpiece. All body processes, functions, and systems work together harmoniously to keep our health in balance. This is the design. This is what is normal. This is what is natural. If we cut our finger, it bleeds, a clot forms, and then actually it heals. We must give it an opportunity to heal itself. If we keep disturbing the healing area or cutting it at the same spot every day, it will not get a chance to heal and we will be in trouble. Similarly, injuries are happening in the body that we are not aware of. We need to give the body an opportunity to heal itself by not injuring it over and over again. Pills, procedures, and interventions are not necessarily the answer. Just think about it. Medical science knows that if someone has been smoking all their life, and then that person actually stops smoking, it takes about 15 years for the body to actually cleanse the lungs. After 15 years, the lungs of a lifelong smoker will actually be like those of someone who has never smoked. The body is constantly healing itself. Let's just look at what the body does in within just 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, the body will perform millions of complex functions automatically and flawlessly. We will take about 15 breaths. Our heart will beat about 70 times. Our tear ducts will moisten our eyes 25 times. 6 million chemical reactions will occur in our brain. Our bone marrow will produce 118 million blood cells and destroy the same amount. We will shed 10,000 particles of skin and 300 million cells will die. Over and over our lifetime, our body will work countless mini miracles to keep us breathing, moving, thinking, and living. This is what is really important. The whole awareness of the body and the ability to heal itself. I mean, the body does its job and says to us, let me do my job. The important principle we need to understand is that the body has an innate capacity to heal itself. So today we've gathered here to talk about chronic illnesses. So what is a chronic illness? Chronic illness is a condition for which there is currently no cure and which is managed with drugs and other treatment. For example, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, and hypertension. About 15 million people in England have a chronic condition. Long-term conditions are more prevalent in older people. 58% of people over 60 have a chronic condition. Today, people with long-term conditions account for 50% of all GP appointments, 64% of all outpatient appointments, and over 70% of all inpatient bed days. Treatment and care for people with long-term conditions is estimated to take up 7 pounds in every 10 pounds of total health and social care expenditure. And the important thing to note is most of these chronic conditions are lifestyle diseases. They need to be treated with lifestyle changes rather than pills and procedures. We now look at the leading causes of death worldwide. And most of the leading causes are chronic illnesses. Can we now have the next poll question, please? So how many miles would the line be if all the blood vessels in the human body were laid out in a single line? Would it be 1,000 miles? Would it be 5,000 miles? Would it be 20,000 miles? Or would it be 60,000 miles? Can we close the poll now and show the results? 56% got it right, which is really nice to know. It is 60,000 miles. Can we close the results? So what does 60,000 miles mean? It is twice the circumference of the Earth. Now, it is very important to understand that blood is needed to keep us alive. It brings oxygen and nutrients to all the parts of the body so that they can keep working. Blood carries carbon dioxide and other waste materials to the lungs, the kidneys, and the digestive system to be removed from the body. Blood also fights infections and carries hormones around the body. So the important thing to understand is this piping in our body needs to be kept squeaky clean. We need to find a diet which is going to keep all the blood vessels clean. Dr. Esselstyn was a general surgeon working with Cleveland Clinic, and he was treating breast cancer patients. He was doing mastectomies day in, day out, and the question that arose to him is, he and his peers were doing nothing to prevent disease in the next unsuspecting victim. So he started doing some research, and he said, he looked at the population in Kenya and compared it with US and said, they actually have like 30 to 40% less incidence of breast cancer than the US. Then he looked at prostate cancer. In 1950, there were only 18 autopsy prostate cancer deaths in Japan. However, in his research, he realized that when the Japanese migrated to the US, in the second and the third generation, they actually had the same incidence of prostate cancer as the Americans did. So here he realized that once the Japanese came over to the US and adopted the standard Western diet, they started getting the same illnesses as the Americans did. So Dr. Esselstyn and his wife decided to actually become plant-based. They followed the diet for a year, and then he volunteered to help heart patients at Cleveland Clinic. His first study in 1995 comprised of 18 patients. Those 18 patients, 8 years prior to the study, had sustained 49 cardiac events. After being on a plant-based diet for 12 years, 17 of the 18 experienced no cardiac events, 12 with a follow-up angiogram, 4 of them actually showed significant disease reversal. One of the patients had angina, and the patient reverted to a standard Western diet and unfortunately ended up requiring a bypass surgery. In 2014, he's conducted a study of 198 patients. 119 of those patients had actually undergone coronary intervention with stents or bypass surgeries. 44 of them actually had had a heart attack. 4 years of being on a plant-based diet, 99.4% of the adherents had no cardiac events at all, and 93% of them had angina improved or resolved. Of the 21 non-adherent patients, 62 experienced an adverse event. A colleague of Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Joe Crow, in 1996 began to get chest pain. He went into cardiology. They found nothing. No high cholesterol, not hypertensive, not diabetic, no family history, and he was actually exercising regularly. However, 3 weeks later, he suffered a heart attack. He was discharged 3 days later. He felt quite depressed. Why? Because he was told that you can't put stents everywhere, and the blockage he had was too far down the artery to have a bypass operation. He met Dr. Esselstyn, and Dr. Esselstyn convinced him to go on to a plant-based diet. 32 months later, his blockage was completely reversed. Look at the slides, the angiograms. And he also did not take any cholesterol-lowering medication. So this is the power of a plant-based diet. Just some stories from drslistin.com. Evelyn Oswick, she had already had 2 heart attacks, angioplasty, a triple bypass operation. The cardiologist said, nothing can be done. You ought to go home and wait to die. She goes on to a plant-based diet. She has been on the plant-based diet for 21 years. Art Soteros, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 1992. In the period between 2003 to 2010, he's had 4 stents, 6 angioplasties, and a bypass surgery. In 2010, he decides to go onto a plant-based diet. Within 4 months, he's had diabetes for 18 years. Within 4 months, he's declared as no longer diabetic. And since then, he also hasn't had any chest pain. So what does Dr. Esselstyn say? Once you start eating plant-based foods, you make yourself heart attack proof. He says, we know that people who eat this way will not have a heart attack. He says, heart attacks, heart disease is a foodborne illness, and we are never going to end this epidemic with stents, with bypasses, with drugs, because none of that is treating the causation of the disease. We now look at cancer. The China study is based on one of the largest comprehensive studies of human nutrition ever conducted, with data collected over a span of 20 years. Colin Campbell and his son Thomas Campbell, they discuss and analyze the results from the study, and they recommend their protocol for the best diet for long-term health. The conclusions are based on a lot of data. The study they created included 367 variables, 65 counties in China, and 6,500 adults. What did this result in? 8,000 statistically significant associations between lifestyle, diet, and disease variables. What did they find? Nutrients from animal products promoted cancer growth, whereas nutrients from plant foods decreased cancer growth. He says, we learned that animal protein was very good at turning on cancer. So what is the best diet that they recommend for long-term good health? They say, our body needs a variety of complex nutrients. Do not focus on an individual nutrient, go for variety. Avoid supplements, get nutrients from whole foods. Whole plant-based foods have more of every nutrient, including antioxidants, fiber, vitamins, minerals, than animal foods. Genes alone do not determine disease. Nutrition is one of the biggest triggers of gene activation. Whole plant foods not only prevent disease, but they can also halt or reverse it. Whole plant-based foods prevent diseases across the board. What is good for your heart is also good for your brain, your liver, your kidneys, and nervous system. We now go over to diabetes. Can we have the next poll question, please? The question is, how many people are diagnosed with diabetes every day in the UK? Is it 300? Is it 500? Is it 700? Or is it 900? Can we close the poll now and have the results? So 46% say 700, 41% say 900. So currently it is 700, so 46% have given the right answer. Can we close the poll? So what does this mean? It means 700 people are diagnosed with diabetes every single day. That is one person every 2 minutes. We are walking into a big, big nightmare. In UK, currently 4 million people have diabetes. It is expected to rise to 5 million by 2025. 10% of NHS budget is spent on diabetes treatment. So what is diabetes? It is a condition in which blood sugar levels are elevated over a prolonged period of time. This results in damage to the inner lining of the blood vessels. Consequently, diabetes is a significant factor for heart and circulatory diseases. It can severely damage the eyes, the kidneys, the nerves, and other body parts, and also double the risk of heart attack and stroke. So let's understand how diabetes and insulin interact. The blood sugar needs an invitation to come into our cells. That invitation is insulin. What if there was no insulin? With nowhere to go, sugar levels in the blood would rise and rise. This is type 1 diabetes. It is an autoimmune disease. What if there is enough insulin, but the insulin does not work? Something's gummed up the lock. This is insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. So tiny droplets of fat inside our cells, so-called intramyocellular lipid gum, it gums up the locks on our muscle cells and prevents from utilizing the glucose. So fat is actually causes type 2 diabetes rather than sugar. But sugar plays a big role in diabetes as well, because when we consume sugar, some of it is used up, some of the excess sugar is then stored in the liver and muscle cells as glycogen, and the rest is stored in the body as fat. Some success stories. Mark Ramirez in 2003 was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and high cholesterol. Was on 5 medication. In 2011, 8 years later, he goes on to a plant-based diet. He loses 50 pounds in weight. In 2 months, he becomes medication-free. Reverse type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and high cholesterol. Mike Farrell in January 2017 was diagnosed with diabetes. Goes on to a plant-based diet. Within 3 months, blood sugar levels become normal. Type 2 diabetes is reversed. So what does Neil Bernard tell us about a plant-based diet and diabetes? He says a plant-based diet is a powerful tool for preventing, managing, and even reversing type 2 diabetes. Not only is this the most delicious prescription you can imagine, but it's also easy to follow. Unlike other diets, there is no calorie counting, no skimpy portions, and no carb counting. Plus, all the side effects are good ones. So let's just recap on the health benefits of a plant-based diet. One, it promotes good health and it reduces medication requirements. It lowers BMI and body fat. It lowers overall mortality. It prevents and reverses coronary heart disease. It prevents and reverses type 2 diabetes. It reduces the incidence of hypertension and high cholesterol. It improves symptoms of chronic illnesses such as gout, rheumatoid arthritis, and MS. It boosts immunity. 60% of our immunity is actually in our gut, and a plant-based diet is excellent to boost our immunity. It prevents autoimmune diseases, and it also prevents many cancers. So the question comes is, what does one eat on a plant-based diet? So one eats fruits, one eats vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts, and seeds. So what is so special about these 5 things? It contains a lot of micronutrients, contains vitamins and minerals, phytonutrients, antioxidants, fiber. Plant-based diets are low in saturated fat and free of cholesterol. So now, what are the foods that we minimize on a plant-based diet? And why do we minimize them? The first one is animal products. Why? Animal protein. It shows that it actually promotes cancer growth. It is associated with heart disease and stroke. IGF-1. High levels of IGF-1 in the blood promote cancer growth. Meat, dairy, seafood, and eggs increase the levels of IGF-1. Cholesterol. It is found only in animal products. It is not an essential nutrient. Liver produces enough for our body needs. It is completely absent in plant food. Saturated fat. It has significant negative impact on our heart health. It leads to higher blood cholesterol levels. It is found primarily in animal-based foods. Meat is the new tobacco. Next is dairy. Human beings are the only mammals who drink the milk of another mammal. Milk is a secretion designed to feed babies. Milk does not supply any nutrient that we cannot get elsewhere. Milk calcium is not necessarily protective against osteoporosis. The highest incidence of osteoporosis and weak bones is in countries with the highest consumption of milk, namely Norway, Finland, Sweden, Australia, UK, and USA. Cows don't produce calcium. They get it from eating greens. Milk is very high in saturated fat. Milk protein, casein, is also linked to a number of cancers. The first thing that you notice when you give up dairy, you have less inflammation and joint pain, better skin, and enhanced digestion. Then the third thing that we minimize is processed foods. What are processed foods? They've been stripped of fiber. They're very, very low in nutrients. They're loaded in salt, sugar, and fat, which are all bad for health. They contain artificial ingredients. They're often high in refined carbohydrates. They're often high in trans fats. When we try to read the label of processed foods, it's like reading a chemistry book. It is engineered for overconsumption. It has been altered to be addictive. The food companies spend hundreds of millions of pounds every year to ensure that we become addicted to the processed foods. So there's a saying, if it is from a plant, eat it. If it is made in a plant, skip it. The next thing that we minimize is sugar. Why? One, it's addictive. We gain weight. There is an increased risk of cancer. It is a cause of diabetes. We age faster. It weakens our immune system, cause of liver failure, cause of heart disease. Cancer cells love sugar. We're now going to look at the 100 different ways and names used by food companies when they add sugar to the processed foods. We wouldn't be able to understand 60, 70, 80% of these names, but this is the names that are used by food companies when they add sugar to our processed foods. The last thing that we want to minimize on a plant-based diet is oil. Why do we want to minimize oil? Because oil is empty calories. There are no nutrients in oil, only empty calories. There are 9 calories per gram of fat as opposed to 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate or protein. It is a processed food. You would need to eat 2 avocados or 40 olives to get 1 tablespoon of oil. You need to understand that nature packages plants in their whole form, and the closer we stay to the original plant, the healthier we are. Don't misunderstand me. Fat is an essential nutrient. Our body needs fat to survive, and it's easy to get the necessary fats by consuming a variety of whole plants. We receive all the nutritional benefits of plants when eaten in their whole form. Oil-free does not mean fat-free. Oil is empty calories. So what does Dr. Esselstyn tell us? After having understood what we can eat and what we minimize or eliminate, Dr. Esselstyn says some people think that the plant-based whole foods diet is extreme. Every year, 500,000, so that's in US, but globally, probably 1,000,000 people. Every year, 1,000,000 people will have their chests opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn into their coronary artery. Some people would call that extreme. We look at a few success stories. So Don Davis, kidney function was just 3% and was on dialysis. Goes on to a plant-based diet. 1 year later, kidney function improves and is actually free from dialysis. Rick, age 73, multiple problems: obesity, heart disease, heart attack, triple bypass surgery, arthritis, enlarged liver, stage 3 kidney disease, and neuropathy. At the age of 73, he goes on to a plant-based diet. Blood pressure becomes normal. He doesn't need any more medication. He loses 30 kilos weight. He eliminates arthritis and neuropathy. At 75, he feels more energetic, light, and younger. Brittany, at the age of only 25, is obese, has got hypertension, high cholesterol, and resting heartbeat is 90. Goes on to a plant-based diet. Blood pressure becomes normal. She loses 27 kilos, no high cholesterol, and no medication at all. This is the power of a plant-based diet. We're now going to talk about blue zones. So Dr. Dan Buettner did a study. He was looking for places in the world where people easily lived to 100 or more. And also that there were clusters of people who not only lived to 100 or more, but these people did not have health problems like heart disease, obesity, cancer, or diabetes. Can we have the next poll, please? And he called these places blue zones. So how many blue zones did Dan Buettner identify? Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 8? Or is it 10? Can we close the poll now? And the results are 39% said that he identified 5 blue zones, and the answer is correct. So we have 5 blue zones. If we can close the poll now. So which are these 5 blue zones? So the first one is Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. So there was a Danish twin study which established that about 10% of how long a person lives within biological limits is dictated by our genes, and the other 90% is actually dictated by our lifestyle. So Dan Buettner, after his research, has written a book, Blue Zones, and he then identified the optimal lifestyle of longevity. I've rearranged that into 5 simple pillars, easy to remember. So first of them is mouth. I've used M, so it's easy to remember all 5 letters. 95% of the optimal, of the people, optimal lifestyle is 95% of the diet is a plant-based diet. And 65% of the diet is actually complex carbohydrates. You just hear a lot of carb bashing these days, but it applies only to the refined carbs. 65% of their diet is actually complex carbs, and they eat legumes every day. The second pillar is muscle. They all engage in constant, moderate physical activity. It's inseparable part of their life. People are walking and helping others at an age of 100. The third pillar is mind. Stress reduction is part of their daily life. Happy hour, nap in the afternoon, chat with friends, quiet walk in the nature. The fourth pillar is member. People of all ages are socially active and integrated into their family and communities. And the fifth pillar is meaning. Have a life purpose. Knowing your sense of purpose is worth up to 7 years of extra life expectancy. So these 5 pillars are the 5 pillars of the optimal lifestyle of longevity. So one thing we need to understand is when we eat, food is actually chemically alive. Molecules of the food that we eat are washing through every cell of our body where our DNA lies unfolded. They turn genes on and off. Every meal that we eat changes us at a genetic or molecular level. This science is called nutrigenomics. Food turns genes on and off. Sometimes we say that my father had a heart attack, so I am also going to have a heart attack. Yes, only if you continue eating the same diet that he did. We may have inherited disease-promoting genes, and all that means is that the gun is loaded. But our diet and lifestyle will determine whether the trigger is pulled or not. That is, whether the disease will manifest or not. The question we need to ask ourselves is, are we feeding health or are we fueling disease? Dean Ornish, he is using part of this his program where he talks about 4 things. One is eat well, move more, stress less, and love more. These all 4 are actually part of the Blue Zone Optimal Diet or Optimal Lifestyle Path. His experiment was on a lot of people. He put them onto this program, and within 3 months, just 3 months, 500 genes were beneficially affected. They turned on the disease preventing genes and turned off the disease promoting genes. Not only did this happen, it also had an impact on telomerase. This is the enzyme which repairs and lengthens telomeres that control how long we live. Only 3 months, they found that telomerase and thus telomere length increased by 30%. If a new drug had been shown to accomplish this, it would be worth $1 billion overnight. So I'll continue with my story. So after doing all this research, I discussed it with my friend, and obviously he did not want to continue with this, with all the medication. So he felt inspired, and he decided to go on to this lifestyle. I discussed it with my wife, and she said we should also try it for 30 days. Always having been a vegetarian, was it going to be easy? Probably not. I've been one of those sort of secret eaters, a pizza every week, lots of crisps, chocolates, Indian savory snacks, ice cream, and our Indian meat thai, drinking 2 glasses of milk, one in the morning, one in the evening. Will I be able to do it? As I convinced my friend, I thought I should try it for at least 30 days. And the results, just for your information, I've got only one kidney. My right kidney was removed about 40 years ago. And I have had high cholesterol, been using statins, etc. So within about 2 months, I lost 12 kilos. My BMI improved significantly. Cholesterol, no more statins required. I've had protein in my urine for many years. That's also gone. And my kidney function is stable. So I am now actually no longer a patient at Northwick Park Hospital. I've been actually discharged. The books that I read were the following. The documentaries that I watched included all of these, which are on YouTube, Netflix, or Amazon Prime. So in a nutshell, we minimize or eliminate 5 things: animal products, dairy, processed foods, sugar, and oil. And we maximize fruits, vegetables, whole grains, pulses, nuts, and seeds. A healthy takeaway. The body has an innate capacity to heal itself, give it the opportunity to do so. We can prevent diseases across the board with one good, simple diet. Let food be thy medicine. It is worth a try. Swap 1 meal a day a week, or 100% for 30 days. If you are on medication, please measure your blood pressure and blood glucose levels regularly, as both improve very quickly. When levels improve, consult your GP to advise on medication dosage. They say you need 3 things, 2 supplements. One is vitamin B12 and vitamin D. And the other thing that we will require is a bigger pension pot, because you will live longer. Last but not least, food for thought. Once you start eating plant-based foods, you make yourself heart attack proof. If it is from a plant, eat it. If it is made in a plant, skip it. Are we feeding health, or are we fueling disease? The longest lived people eat a plant-based diet. Nothing they eat has a wrapper. Food turns genes on and off. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Dinesh, thank you very much for your insight, your experience, your own research, fantastically shown. And the books that you shared, it's really great for people's takeaway. We have a few questions from the attendees. If you can just please check your chat.
Sure. So the first question is, can one mix supplements with conventional medicine, especially for terminal illnesses like cancer? I'm not qualified to answer that question. I would say please do consult with with your GP. I can easily say that the more plant-based foods that you eat will definitely help you. Uh, the second question is, after a lifetime of eating in a certain way, are you saying we should just change our diet? Well, all I can say is, from example, I did it. Now it is nearly 18 months that I changed my diet, and I don't feel tempted to go back. Do I have a cheat day? I don't plan cheat days, but sometimes, when social, you've gone out, you might have something. But otherwise, I am saying if you are keen and want to do it, I think you should do it. The next question is, can we eat salt? Yes, salt is okay, but within the daily recommended dose. Please do not overdo on salt because it has a lot of other impacts on health, including blood pressure. The other question that I've got is, I've been using the term plant-based rather than vegan. So is there a difference between the two? Well, plant-based is vegan, but vegan can include, it can include white bread, it can include chocolates, it can include ice cream, it can include cookies. All that is actually vegan. So what I say is plant-based is equal to vegan less all the junk. So that is plant-based. The next question is, what is my view on intermittent fasting? So I think intermittent fasting is really brilliant. And what I normally follow is a 16-hour of an intermittent fast. It helps the body to use up all the glucose and the glycogen stores in the body. It starts autophagy, ketones start. So it is actually very, very, very beneficial for us if we can and are able to do intermittent fasting. Someone is telling me, amazing, have you thought of becoming a doctor? Wow. Perhaps I should. I should think about doing at least a course in nutrition. Can we give a newborn baby a plant-based diet? Are there any micronutrients that he or she can miss out on? So a newborn baby, I think you should consult your doctor because there may be micronutrients which they may require. So I would suggest that for newborn babies, one must consult a doctor. There are other questions. Is this presentation going to be available? That's over to you, Mala.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dinesh Bhai. Well, the presentation, we will see if we can get that. Dinesh Bhai, would that be okay with you?
Yes, that's fine with me. Yes, absolutely fine.
Okay. We will have that available through the website and you'll be able to download it. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Does anybody have any last questions before we round up today's talk? Okay. I'd like to say a very big thank you, Dinesh Bhai. Thank you so much for sharing such information and so beautifully explained in a very layman's terms with extraordinary research on that as well. I wish you all the best. I wish all the attendees on both Zoom and the YouTube. And I love the last the bit about, would you please repeat it when you said, if it's made from plant, you eat it. And if it's made in a plant, like in a factory, you skip it. Would you please say it your way?
So if it is made in a plant, eat it. If it is grown, from a plant, eat it. If it is made in a plant, skip it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And from Oshwal Association of the UK, we wish you a video good evening. Join us again for online events, which are available on our website, oshwal.co.uk. And until the next time, I say stay safe, stay healthy, and be positive. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.